What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another video here on Let's Talk Resident Evil. And in this video, I wanted to talk about the survival horror landscape, the current survival horror state in 2024, and what we're looking at with these other survival horror games that are coming out besides just Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil has been the dominant franchise in survival horror forever now, especially since 2016, 2017, as the pieces started to get back together with Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and so on and so forth. The momentum started to build, especially from Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think a lot of fans were just waiting for another remake, and they sold a lot, and it kept continuing. They sold a lot of the mainline games, and a lot of remakes did sell very well, especially Resident Evil 4 Remake. Despite how you feel about maybe a couple mainline games or a remake or so, they're selling really well, and the reception has been pretty good amongst the fans. Now, Silent Hill is coming up in October, so now it's time for Silent Hill and Konami and Bloober Team to show us what they got with Silent Hill 2. I think this is going to be very telling. I think some fans are skeptical. A lot of fans like myself are going to try to stream it day one just to kind of see how it is, to give an honest take on it. And I think it's important to give our honest take and opinions of it. Of course, we can look at the trailers. You know, I did a video talking about how I feel about it so far, but many people were kind of pushing back saying, well, hold on, let's not give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's see, you know, what happens. Some people were saying, give them the benefit of the doubt. I am just being positive from what I've seen. But let's talk about things like Dead Space, for example. Dead Space Remake came out, and it didn't sell very well. While the reception was really good, and some people might have liked the changes, not liked the changes, EA brought Dead Space back, and I thought the remake was very well done, and I enjoyed it. I streamed it on the channel, played it a bunch, went back and even played it off camera, and still enjoyed it. But guess what? Now we're hearing that we might not get another Dead Space, and it definitely underperformed for EA. And you know how that looks in EA's eyes. They're not going to continue making or remaking these games if they fail to meet sale expectations. Same thing with Alone in the Dark. They shut down the entire studio back in June that worked on Alone in the Dark. And guess what? I actually really liked Alone in the Dark. I would give it a solid maybe 7 out of 10. Dead Space Remake, I would probably give an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. I actually really enjoyed both of those games. Now, Dead Space, for starters, that was the first Dead Space game we got in over a decade, or just about, right? So Dead Space 3 came out in 2013, and it was dormant ever since. Now, this could have been an opening for more Dead Space games, but it didn't sell. And what happened? Did people not buy it? Did people lose interest? That's why I wanted to make this video, because it seems like, unless it's Resident Evil or, you know, some indie horror game that's really pushing for that old school kind of look or vibe, it doesn't really get as much attention or sales, it seems. It's very interesting, because it seems like in a, you know, all these years on YouTube, I always saw people wanting Dead Space back, right? Because when Dead Space 3 came out, I was probably 3 or 4 years on this channel specifically. And we've talked about Dead Space on podcasts before. I talked about Dead Space Remake a lot when it came out because I really wanted to put it over. I bought it full price. The deluxe edition, I think I saved a couple dollars because I got it through, or I had Game Pass and they gave you a couple dollars off, right? But I got the deluxe edition. I really enjoyed it. And same thing with Alone in the Dark. I bought Alone in the Dark day one. But with Dead Space has been a more, I want to say, relevant franchise in recent years, where the last Alone in the Dark game was 2008. And that's when Dead Space 1 came out. So Dead Space was even more of a recent horror game, and it still failed to meet sales expectations. Now, I don't know what sales, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know what they expected to sell and didn't. I don't even know if that information is necessarily out there. We just know that they weren't really happy with the response. Again, I didn't like some little changes they made to Dead Space 1 Remake, but for the most part, I thought it was very well worth the full price, in my opinion. And with the last Alone in the Dark game, that was really my entry into the series for a long time. I might have played the 2008 one a little bit here and there back when I had a 360 and I was able to burn games back in the day, but I never really gave it a full chance. Some people say I should go back and play that 2008 game, and I might, but when I played this game, it was really my first time I sat down and finished a full Alone in the Dark game. And guess what? I actually really enjoyed it. Like I said, giving it a 7 out of 10, that doesn't mean I, hated it completely. There was just certain aspects of the combat that I wish were tightened up. I wish we had a little bit more of a variety in how we could approach the enemies, because they tried to make it seem like there was a stealth feature, but then it kind of didn't really do anything at a certain point. But I did like the story. I liked the characters. I thought the acting was well done, and the graphics in the Unreal Engine were actually pretty good. After it got patched, the bugs were fixed and stuff like that, but it's a shame that this didn't even get a chance, and the studio was shut down a few months later. Now, some fans will probably play that game years from now and say, you know what? This is actually pretty solid, kind of like a sleeper hit, where maybe it wasn't completely 10 out of 10, but for, $10 to $20, if you find it in a, bargain bin or Black Friday or a big sale, it's probably worth it. I would still recommend it. If you have it on PC, there's ways you can get it for a lot cheaper, obviously. You can get it for, free 99 if you want, but at this point, it's a done deal. Alone in the Dark looks like it's going back in the coffin. And same thing with Dead Space. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is it's very interesting, because Resident Evil being the largest selling survival horror franchise, hands down, we'll see how Silent Hill compares, right? But even then, with Silent Hill, it hasn't been around for a while, so it really needs to build up momentum again. So who knows if the sales will even compare to a Resident Evil 4 remake, to a Resident Evil Village, or 7. I mean, I think these games saw Resident Evil come back. They saw what Capcom was doing with the remakes, and Capcom again knocked down the door for these horror franchises to come back. Now, whether or not they sold well is nothing to do with them. It just comes down to maybe the fans' awareness. Maybe people just weren't really that, keen on an idea of a Dead Space remake. But why not? I mean, Dead Space was really just picking up that momentum after Dead Space 2. Dead Space 3 came out, and it was a little mixed. Some people didn't like the co-op. They didn't like the more action route. But they still could have made a Dead Space 4 to make it all right again. But no. That was it for Visceral Games, and then it went in the coffin. You bring it back out, and it doesn't sell well. I don't know why you wouldn't give it a chance to at least make a Dead Space 2 remake, because I think Dead Space 2 could be even better than the first game, honestly. I love Dead Space 2, but we don't even really, see the behind the scenes on, maybe these conversations that are happening. Of course, these are game designers that want to make money. These companies need to hit quarter sales goals and everything else. So there's a business behind this. And I know that at the end of the day, when they see low sales numbers, it doesn't look very good for the franchises. But that's why it's very strange. You have indie horror games that come out, like Crow Country, that I actually really enjoyed. Tormented Souls, I really enjoyed. I can't wait for the sequel for that one. There's a bunch of other indie games that I haven't even played that do pretty well within the community, and people talk about them. Now, of course, they're not AAA games by any means, so they might not sell as well, or the awareness might not be there, but they have an underground following, and that's fine. But from an indie developer standpoint, if it doesn't necessarily sell a gazillion copies, that doesn't mean they're just going to pack it in and not keep making independent games. I'm pretty sure some of the ones that I just mentioned made enough to get a sequel like Tormented Souls, or I would like to see Crow Country get a sequel, right? Things like that. So it's a different pocket. It's almost like the AAA survival horror stuff. Resident Evil has the crown. Silent Hill is going to really try with Silent Hill 2, but Resident Evil has the crown right now. When it comes to indie horror, it's flourishing. There's so much indie horror on consoles, on PC, but they don't take much of a hit if they don't sell as much as these corporations want. And it's just a very weird time where we have these pockets of indie horror over here, AAA survival horror over here. Two of the most known names, Resident Evil and Silent Hill is just making a comeback. Now, of course, they have this roadmap of Silent Hill F, the Silent Hill movie that's coming out, right? And of course, Silent Hill 2 remake. Fans want to see a 1 remake, a 3 remake, but how far will we get if, let's say, Silent Hill 2 remake doesn't sell very well, or Silent Hill F doesn't sell very well? Will Konami just kind of give up again on Silent Hill? I hope not. I think competition is a good thing. We need to have some competition in the gaming market, the console market, the survival horror genre. It's good to have competition because it shows the other developers, oh crap, they did that better than us. Let's try to improve our ways of doing it, and vice versa, right? So it's very crucial that Silent Hill 2 knocks it out of the park and makes fans happy, because no one's going to give a shit about Silent Hill F, which is, if you don't know what that is, that's supposed to be the next like Silent Hill sequel, right, that we've gotten since Downpour, as far as like a mainline sequel game. I don't know where it takes place in the timeline. Excuse my ignorance. I don't know all the Silent Hill lore. I just know that's what was shown in the transmissions part 1. And then the second transmissions was just Silent Hill 2, which is what a lot of fans wanted to see. But it's an interesting time in survival horror. Us Resident Evil fans are very happy. We're getting great content. We have a lot of good stuff to look forward to. I know right now it's a lull because we're just waiting for the next announcement. It's just all rumors and speculation. But don't worry. I think we'll get that announcement soon enough. And we know they're still making Resident Evil games, and it's still making a lot of money. So what are your thoughts on some of the survival horror drought that we've been seeing with other franchises like Dead Space, like Alone in the Dark? Do you think survival horror right now, besides Resident Evil and maybe Silent Hill, that it's really thriving more in the indie scene, which is nothing wrong with an independent horror game, especially like Crow Country? That's probably my favorite game of the year so far, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens in the future. Resident Evil has nothing to worry about for now until they see a complete, stunt in the sales, but that hasn't happened yet. It's just been getting bigger and bigger, and more people get into it. So I want to see the same for Silent Hill. I wanted to see the same for Dead Space. I wanted to see the same for Alone in the Dark. I bought those games day one, man. I was there streaming it. And I try to support these developers, and it just sucks to see the, corporations take a look at these sales numbers and they shut them down. Like, nobody deserves to lose their job over, low sales, but it does happen. It's in the industry. And of course, they can always, have something on their resume to at least get other jobs within the industry. You know what I mean? I can only wish a lot of those developers well that did have their, whole studio shuttered. I mean, even Callisto Protocol, that whole studio got completely obliterated essentially after Glenn left and everything. And I liked Callisto. I actually thought it was a good game. That was another one that it came out. Maybe people thought it was going to be the next Dead Space, and it wasn't, but I still like Callisto for what it was. Another horror title to bring up that I wish should have continued, should have had a sequel. And I know they had those plans. And then once the sales and everything stopped, they pretty much ended it in the DLC, which I haven't played yet. I still want to play and stream for all of you, but it's just a damn shame. So let me know down in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on Resident Evil, Silent Hill being the top dogs of survival horror, while the independent scene is kind of over here in the corner doing their own thing. What are your thoughts on the survival horror games that didn't make it, like your Callistos, which is a brand new IP, or your Dead Space remake, or Alone in the Dark reboot? I want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, check out LTRE on all the socials, check out the merch down below, and stay tuned for more LTRE content.